Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Mastering Dungeons, your favorite and Iceland's 160th favorite podcast on news, interviews, game design talk. I am Shawn Merwin here with the well-caffeinated and well-hydrated Teos Abadia. He's got the coffee, he's got the water, he is ready to rock and roll. Teos, how's it going?
It's going great. Before this show, I did one of those things that said, oh no, I was going to caulk the bathroom. And I did it. I got it done. Miracle speed, cleaned everything up. Now we just wait 24 hours and enjoy the glorious bliss of a re-caulked bathroom. So my life's amazing.
Is that so your battle map ink doesn't get in the cracks?
That's great. And I am also back from San Diego, where I enjoyed waves and boogie boarding. And it was just great with the family and the in-laws. It was absolutely wonderful. So I'm great. And this week, I've got PAX. So I'm living the dream.
It doesn't get any better than that. San Diego, all the wonderful weather, and then you go up to PAX with all the wonderful gaming. What are you doing at PAX there in Seattle?
Yeah, so I'm helping to administer the D&D events with Baldman Games, which actually Dave Christ will be there. Les is going to be there, so some of the big names are coming out to help us this year. We'll see some Wizards of the Coast folks as well who will be in attendance. We've got Legends of Greyhawk. We've got Forgotten Realms Adventures in Faerun previews using adventures from that upcoming set of books, and demos learn to play using the new starter set. So that's really excited because I'm looking at those adventures. I can't talk about them, but they will be there, being used, and those folks who play them can talk about them. And then it'll be out before you know it, and then I can talk about them.
And you can talk about them. And we can also talk about the things that our listeners talk about. Some of them actually send us emails or tweets or toots or messages via Patreon. We get them all directions, and we're going to take a couple today. We're going to start with Waterford Wizard, who comes to us via our Patreon Discord with this question. Via Dan Ayoub's affirmation that the D&D 2024 rule set is meant to be an evolution of the 5e rules, does this give you more confidence in the 2024 rules or less? More from the standpoint that we can pull forward any 2014 rules to fill in the cracks, or less because the new rules do things that take the game in a direction that you feel it shouldn't have. So you want to sort of explain what Dan's comment was, and then what your take on this is.
Yeah, good call. So Dan, being a senior vice president, could have not written it in any column at all. It could have been, Greg Bilzen or someone else who wrote it, but Dan chose to write this, which is, to begin with, kind of cool, right? Like it's the person who could distance themselves from D&D and instead dug in and thought about, all right, I got to write a blog post. How do I do this? And work through it. And so that's kind of neat right there. But what he did was write a blog post that went through various things, including saying that the rules are an evolution of the game and sort of hinting at compatibility and carrying it forward, and how much the team cared about them is sort of what I recall from that. It's been a bit since I've read it. Does that sound right to you?
Yeah. It talked about, we're learning from what has come, and we want to move forward by listening to you. And one of the points that Dan made was that they see the 2024 rules as not a replacement for the 2014 rules, but an evolution of them. Hence the question.
And so that hints at things like, we don't have to replace every single book because you can just keep using the old books. If an adventure was fun, it continues to be fun, that kind of thing. And so this question, I had to laugh because it was asked on our Patreon Discord, and one of our listeners said, marketing speak never gives me more confidence in anything. And that's where I think that what's important about what Dan wrote is not the specifics as much as the broad strokes. Dan could have said many things, or like I said, nothing at all. And he chose to make these particular points, one being to phrase language around how everything is 5e and the company cares about how it evolves. And it can mean a lot, right? So two things it could mean. It could mean we want to carefully look at how the game plays and fine-tune the rules over time to create excellent play. That it could mean that. These are not words he said. I'm just saying this could be a thing he means. Or he could say, we want to continue to sell you on slightly different iterations of 5e, maybe every 2 to 3 years, continuously tweaking and changing 5e and never bringing you the great advances that you would see in a 6e. This is obviously my language. We will update D&D Beyond without telling you, erode the value of your paper products. We will monetize such digital updates and increasingly offer digital-only enhancements, right? So you can take statements in a lot of ways, and this speaks to, our Discord member saying you can't trust marketing. But neither of those things have to be true. I'm just showing those kinds of, what it could mean. But at a broad level, I like what Dan said. Dan showed an interest in D&D and its fans that I wouldn't have expected from that position. So I hope that means that Dan, as he looks at his mission to deliver on very broad initiatives that bring D&D across lots of different forms, lots of different ways to produce revenue, that he cares about these topics and continues to consider them and how it impacts us, right? That he has started on that foot is really good. I think 2024 itself, to get into the question around the 2024 rules, I think those core books speak to a very specific view the design team has. So I don't expect massive changes over time. I think 2024 will be very successful compared to any RPGs out there or any editions of D&D. Personally, I find the language is not the kind of language, let alone even what I think of it. To me, when I look at the language, I suspect it will not resonate as well as 2014, be so easy to create deep fandom across any type of fan. If that's true, that will put Wizards in a position where they may want to tweak it further or even consider a 6e, my favorite. But at the same time, I hope 2024 is an enormous success, lots of growth, elevates our industry, even though I want a 6e myself personally. All right, Shawn, I spoke for a million years.
No, you said exactly what I think a lot of people are thinking who think about it rationally. I want to talk about the marketing speak. And, we hear people speaking at Wizards to us or to different audiences. And to say we never believe marketing speak, or we don't believe anything the VPs on up say, that's fine. You don't have to. But you also can't then say, I do believe the things I hate that they say. Right. So when Chris Cox talks about AI, or when Chris Cox talks about these other, going completely digital, and you can't then say, well, that has to be true. The things I hate have to be true. The things that sound good are just marketing speak. You have to take it all with the same grain of salt, because it's all coming from that same place of trying to communicate to a particular audience, a particular thing that hopefully that audience is wanting to hear. So that's the way I look at it when I hear things like this. Whether what he's saying is true or not is pretty much irrelevant. You hope that they have a vision, they being the management team, the leadership team at Wizards of the Coast, have a vision that they are bought in on, have researched carefully, and will benefit all parts of the game, the hobby, the business. It'll benefit their bottom line. It will benefit the players and the game masters who enjoy this hobby. That's all we can hope. So we can listen to these things, and then we can look for evidence that these things have been followed through on.
Yeah. It's super hard, right? One of the things we talk about all the times in our Patreon Discord is how nobody really knows why 2014 was so successful. And you can point at all sorts of things and say, this surely helped. But what was the secret sauce that you could reproduce? Nobody knows. And it reminds me of at another company, not Wizards, someone told me once they had a conversation where it was, a small group management meeting talking about the wild success they'd been having, the wild growth. And this person spoke up, they're a friend I love, and they said, I just want to say, let's not pretend we have any idea why these things happened. Let's not pat ourselves on the back about this. So let's keep trying to figure that out and be humble about it, because it's not like we somehow are God imbued to have succeeded. So,
Right.
tread carefully and make no assumptions. And everybody kind of looked around and, yeah, okay.
Yeah. And the one thing that we can say about, I think, 2014 to 2024 is that it is the same basic game, right? You are still rolling the same dice, adding numbers, comparing it to an armor class. Everything works relatively smooth enough.
Yeah.
We've talked to people who are running 2024 and 2014 characters and level up advanced characters all in the same game.
Right.
And they just use the rules for that particular character. And then the game master, the DM, is the one who is making whatever adjustments they need on their end to make sure that the adventures and the monsters and those things work within that conglomeration of different rules.
Yeah, and even now, right? Like I've seen DMs at conventions that just are essentially running 2014, and they just sort of ignore the language changes or the rules adjustments, the different actions or things like that. They're just doing what they always did, and it shows you that it works anyway, right? I think where we get into the interesting bits of 2024 is where it has impacts on the design, where the design is different, the language is different. And the easiest way to think of it is fourth edition, right? Fourth edition had design parameters that led to these very encounter-based bits being in there. And they sometimes carried so much weight that they overwhelmed other parts of the game if the DM wasn't very knowledgeable and careful about it, or the designer wasn't. Those are the kind of things, the kind of impacts that can happen even though there's full compatibility or enough compatibility.
For sure. Yeah, and we'll talk about that when we talk about our main topic today, which is MCDM's Draw Steel, particularly their montage and their negotiation system. But we still have another question to get to from DT Norris via our Patreon Discord. How do you deal with tables or players who just treat insight checks against NPCs as a true-false lie detector? It's great that I have the rapport with my players that they trust me out of game, so that when the DM says a thing, as the DM, it's true. That said, without breaking this player trust, how do I provide a bit more nuance in my responses to an insight check result of a 6 versus a 20 versus a 30 or beyond? Beyond, you have no idea, or you sort of feel that way, or you are completely certain. And then a bonus, if you can recommend other resources that might talk about this, very common topic, I'd love to hear it. So this is a question where I was like, do we take a whole game design segment and talk about it, or do we try to answer it here? And so we're going to try to answer it here, but by answering it here, we are not going to be able to give the long, complicated answer that would do it justice, because this spans different kinds of games, different kinds of campaigns, different player styles, different GMing styles, and so on and so on and so on. And so many people think that they have the answer. And if they think they have the answer, they have not thought about it enough to answer the question in all its different permutation. So what I'm going to do instead is focus on one important word there, and that's nuance. Nuance can be great to strive for until it's not. It's great in poetry, right? It's great in certain kinds of stories where we want to feel that drama of conflicting emotions or conflicting motivations. And we can get some great entertainment out of it. It's terrible and unproductive, nuances, when it's in user manuals, when it's in other kinds of stories. It's fun when we see someone being tricked, right? It's often less fun when we're, as the player of a game, being tricked rather than our character. And some people don't even like it when their characters are tricked. They don't even want to take that sort of engagement. Because players often want direction, right? They want and they need to know what is true in their character's world so they can make both game decisions and narrative decisions based on that knowledge. And I'm not a good enough actor as a DM to show nuance subtly. So I need to be on the show, don't tell right stage, I need to tell because I am not equipped as a game master to try to show. And some players are not equipped as social beings to grasp that nuance when they are shown rather than told. So in many games, the players are being attacked by guards. And we, as the storytellers, as the game masters, as the game designers, as the writers of the adventure, want players to understand these guards do not want to be attacking you. They are being forced to. Now, you don't know why, but I want you to understand that for various reasons. This is where a check that is just a straight up insight, yes or no, can be very valuable because I don't want to have to act out their attacks as I try to show this hesitation.
The reluctance, yeah.
Right. I just want to say they're attacking you, but there is great hesitation in them. Now, sometimes that will be behind an insight check. Sometimes I just want to come out and say it. So the nuance there is what I want to focus on as something that can be great to strive for, but it's not necessarily the best thing for a game.
I love that. This is not an aspect of the question that I'd considered at all, Shawn, which is why I love doing the show with you. I had totally just taken it in a different direction, which I'll get to, but I love this because, yeah, the answer to this has to come back with self-examining your campaign and your players and why they're reacting to these various things in different ways. So I love what you said. The part where I was going to zero in on is around the mechanics of that role and what you say. And on that topic, I think that it's important to establish a rapport with your players. First, that you're not looking to trick them or hurt them as a entity, right? Like you're trying to make you're cheering them on, you're trying to make a fun game, but that NPC can have motives. And it's tricky to sometimes want to have, or the adventure gives us, a duplicitous character with which to interact. And the question is, how can they figure it out? And that's where I think this role is not a lie detection role. You can treat it that way, right? If you need to, if you want to, you can. But what the nice thing about insight checks can be is they can be your opportunity as DM, GM to express and give a look into what this NPC is like. So what I look at when someone says, can I make an insight check? Absolutely. And I might say, just remember, this isn't a lie detector check, but you try to get a read on them. Okay, you've got that result. So for that result, here's what you can figure out. And what it gets to is the motives of your NPC, right? And that's where you can give them, there is a hesitation to how they speak. Perhaps they're holding something back, or there is something they're afraid of, something like that, right? And it gives them grounds to interact further with that NPC. And you can color that the way you want it based on where you think this scene will be more fun if it goes one way or the other, right? Maybe this merchant seems to be cheating them, but really what it is that they're afraid that if they don't make a certain profit amount, the overlord will come down on them. And so you have an opportunity to learn about that through additional interactions. And that's what you're sort of hinting at, right? It's the way that you can hint at it. And the more that you have practice with not giving lie detector answers, but giving insights into the NPC, the players can become accustomed to that. And you develop a rapport with your players to where they can react to things and ask more questions. And they will want to make those insight rolls because it's a gateway to more knowledge and more participation. Now, that's a home game group kind of thing. One shots, absolutely, like Shawn is saying, it can make more sense to just help people really understand what's going on because you want to get to the fun and you don't have the time to slowly over time learn each other.
Yeah, I didn't read the whole discussion on our Discord channel, but a lot of the times these checks are just to confirm something the player already thinks.
That's true. Yeah.
And it becomes weird then when the player thinks that this character's lying. Or in some way deceiving or not being forthright. The player thinks it. The game master has probably role played it in a way that it makes them think that. but then the insight check fails. So what does that do? What's the outcome of that? The outcome of that's just awkward because that says in the game, your character believes what's being said, or at least has no more insight into what has been said than anyone would. But you as the player may think or may even know that this is a lie. So how does that reconcile? If you ignore your character's role, then you are playing the game in a way that some people feel is right, not justified by the rules.
Yeah.
So it's a
Yeah.
and it maybe you are one of those people,
Yeah.
but now you're in that conundrum of okay, do I play my character as not as smart as I am, which is what they are,
Yeah.
or do I play it as myself? But I hate playing as myself when there are puzzles, right?
Yeah.
I want to play as my character. So now, am I only doing this when it benefits me the most? Is that hypocritical? And now you get into all of these.
I like to lean when it
permutations.
comes to, there's that level where you're like, well, this did not make some DC, but it wasn't a terrible roll. And that's where I will give them some information, right? Help because of that, what's happening between us socially. I will try to give some indication towards what they're looking to, of whether they're lying or not. Some indication, this character has complex motivations. It's not as simple as lying, something like that. But you can't get a good read on them, right? It might be a type of thing I say to you. And that might lead to, okay, I'm not going to stab them, but I'm going to continue talking and figuring things out. But maybe I'm a little careful about it, right? A really bad roll, I like to lean into, right? Okay, explain to me this roll of a 3 on your insight check. What wild conclusion do you draw? And that can be hilarious, right? It reminds me of in 3rd edition, there was a player I'd play with who played a bard. And when they rolled a terrible roll, they would make up a fiction about the world. Oh, in this desert, these tracks belong to ice trolls, right? And would just say it as fact. And it was a fun way to say, you have no clue, right? But take it far and lean into it and have fun with it.
Nice. Thank you for those questions. You can continue to hit us with your questions via all the places that you listen to the show, including sending an email to masteringdnd@gmail.com. So let's get into our news and commentary section, starting with the new Unearthed Arcana that may have blown the roof off Teos' skull. It is called Apocalyptic Subclasses. And what are some of the subclasses that they consider apocalyptic, Teos? Well, they consider the Circle of Preservation Druid. That's starting to sound a little familiar. The Gladiator Fighter. Ooh, we're getting closer. The Defiled Sorcery Sorcerer. Oh, boy. The Sorcerer King Patron. Warlock. Well, that sort of sums it all up as Teos holds his copy of the 4th edition Dark Sun campaign setting. So all of these things are definitely firmly rooted in Dark Sun. Does that mean we are going to see a Dark Sun setting? Who knows? But at least it's pointing us in that direction. What do you think of Teos?
Well, one of our friends said a very hilarious comment of surely this comes, I forget the exact wording, but something like, surely this comes from the book of campaign settings where we'll never go to. And I laughed very hard because that's entirely possible. This could be some grab bag of things. But boy, you could have gone for Apocalypse without saying Gladiator, Preserver, Defiler, Sorcerer King, and they went there. So, I mean, I don't know. And the features are very kind of cool. The Circle of Preservation Druid, essentially in the fiction, is using up a wild shape to create a restorative zone of protected land. Sadly, doesn't last afterwards, but it's like it's greening and restoring while it's there. The Gladiator uses charisma to be as much performer as warrior, does cool things with weapon masteries. The Defiled Sorcerer draws energy from the natural world, and it can spend its own hit dice, but then has a chance to use the hit dice of an enemy to fuel and do extra damage. It also can defile an area when it uses its features. The Sorcerer King Patron Warlock draws power from a tyrannical figure. And there is a lot there that actually reminds me of Templars. So creating fear, frightening the frightened condition and creatures, things like that. Issuing edicts, things like that are very like if you were a Templar more than just a patron. But the article has nothing about it that says the words Dark Sun, nothing about setting, doesn't mention tier or the tablelands or anything like that. So I don't know, but it is, as a fan of Dark Sun, my favorite setting. I mean, this is pretty incredible, and I'm bated breath waiting to see what's coming and when and how, and and please don't screw it up. Because boy, do I have comments about this Unearthed Arcana, which next week I will get into. I'm going to have Treant Monk on the show while you're on vacation, and we're going to talk about the optimization side and the story side. I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, I have a few things to say about the story side, but I will hold off. And you can go listen to the Eldritch Lorecast to hear what I said about that yesterday.
Good. Okay.
There you go. But we have another sort of big announcement that took everybody by surprise, and that's Critical Role announcing that Campaign 4 will play using the rule set known as D&D 2024 in a West Marches style campaign.
So you said it's Daggerheart? It's Daggerheart? Is that what I heard you say?
Yes, you heard me say not Daggerheart. Yes, you heard me say D&D 2024. So we reported recently that Brennan Lee Mulligan will be the DM and that Matt Mercer might be a player. Now we learned that there are going to be not one, not two, but 3 different tables of players. The players will take turns playing what has been referred to loosely as a West Marches style campaign. This style was popularized by a game designer named Ben Robbins on the site called Ars Ludi. If you have heard us talk about the game Microscope or In This World or several other games from Lame Mage Press, those are all Ben Robbins creations. So this isn't really a setting. It's not really a rule set. It's a style of game campaign that makes use of rotating players and scheduling games in a way that takes the onus of the scheduling off of the game master and puts it on players to come up with a time when they can get together.
Yeah. And it's funny always to me that it started with 3rd edition and yet became actually an idea that the OSR has really kind of run with as a way of doing a more sandboxy type of game, because OSR type play favors that kind of sandboxy move. But this actually began with 3rd edition, which is kind of a fun, quirky bit. And now we'll see it explored in with the 2024 rule set, which I think is awesome.
Yeah. So just to add one more thing about West March style play, it's generally you start from a hub and you work your way out, exploring the unknown. So every session needs to start at that hub, go out, and then finish and come back. So the next group of players can be a mixture. It could be players who just played in the previous one plus others. So in that sense, there's a living campaign sort of feel to it, where you want to start an adventure, go through it, and end it. So the next adventure can be any DM and any set of players. So in that sense, it will be interesting to see how much West March's style play is actually done by this, because that usually means they're a mixture of players, whereas this talked about 3 different tables, but then said there may be some interaction between them. So it could be very fun. It could be very different depending on how they get together and decide to run it.
Yeah, and it sounds like they will represent different organizations, which is really cool, is the different tables. And what I love about it, what I think could be really cool, and Brandon Lee Mulligan's the kind of guy who could absolutely just rock this, is that you could have situations where the audience knows a thing, but this group doesn't know that thing because it was the other group that did it, right? And that's the kind of drama that audiences can really thrive on, right? Where something, you could have one group sets a trap against goblins that'll come through here, but then the next group of players walks down that same path and everybody knows there's a trap there, right? That can provide a really different mechanic to what you usually see in actual play that would be, pretty tasty to watch. So I would guess that they're going to go in that direction of sort of involving the audience as the glue between all these different groups, and that could be really fun.
So were you one of the many folks who were surprised that the campaign used D&D instead of Daggerheart?
No, not at all. Especially when they announced that Brennan Lee Mulligan was going to be the DM. Not that he can run anything, but it made a little more sense. Matt's running a Daggerheart campaign. Matt Mercer's doing that. You've got Chris Perkins and Jeremy Crawford who could be running Daggerheart as well. And it might make a lot of sense for them to do that, given the interviews, and we'll get into that. And so having this as a 5th edition game to make sure that you have a toehold in that area, that you maintain relationship with D&D and the D&D community, your fans perhaps, right, that they're not having to learn a whole new system for this campaign. To me, this makes a lot of sense, and it's actually what I thought. I could have gone either way. I didn't think it was obvious or anything like that, but I would have given it a 60-40 towards the result we saw, because it just makes sense to have some foothold in the D&D area and keep exploring that space. How about you?
I didn't care either way. I had no horse in that race.
No horse.
Obviously, I do a lot of D&D 5th edition 2024 design and development. I like Daggerheart, and I look forward to playing it more. I look forward to maybe designing a little bit in it if given an opportunity. So it wasn't going to affect me personally. Business wise, it's an interesting thing to discuss, but so many people already have their preconceived notions, and they look at this decision through the lens of whether they love or hate D&D, whether they love or hate Critical Role, whether they love or hate Daggerheart, and so everyone just put their own stamp on what the decision meant. And for me, it's just like, hey, I hope it goes well. I hope they bring lots and lots of new people into the hobby, and we will continue to make games in the systems that we love and that pay for our tea.
Yeah,
Cheers.
Absolutely. I mean, and I think that Critical Role would be unwise to think, oh, for sure, we will never write for D&D again, right? That would be absurd. And in this case, even they're leaning into it, right? Jeremy Crawford and Chris Perkins are designing subclasses that will be special 5th edition 2024 subclasses these players will play, and that makes a lot of sense, right? And maybe they will sell those. Well, why not, right? Just make a lot of sense. And in fact, it can create on-ramps, right? You can say, hey, look at this really cool 5th edition subclass. Oh, and by the way, here's the Daggerheart version. Do you want to check it out? Perfect sense.
Well, let's jump right into that. Chris and Jeremy Perkins and Crawford talking about why they joined Darrington Press. I did not see this video, but you did, Teos. So what did they talk about?
Well, it was super interesting, right? Because what they're talking about is what they love about Critical Role and Darrington Press and what drew them there, which I can't help but listen to as compared to the job we had, hours ago, days ago, right? So they said, we really love, and this was Todd Kenrick interviewing them and asking them why they joined, right? He was very careful to not say, why did you leave Wizards? It was, why did you join Darrington Press? And here's a quote from Jeremy. We really love the valuing here of storytelling and also of the role-playing game as a vehicle to empower other people. And I think, well, that's a quote I could have heard you say about Wizards, right? And he says, the passion for it as an art form. And I'm like, okay, there's a little something. I've heard other people who work with D&D say this as well, like the art of it, the passion of it, not the money, not the business. And Jeremy was saying this idea of passion for it as an art form flows through the Darrington Press team. Jeremy says the way actual play animates the place also resonated with them and their Acquisitions Incorporated background, which I thought was really interesting. They both talked about the importance of actual play to them, and that having a closer tie to it energized them. I thought that was really neat. In many ways, it's hard to imagine a better fit. And Perkins speaks to the, quote, belief system in believing that art for its own sake is important. Artists are important, the audience is important, and all those things are kept at forefront in everybody's mind with everything that they work on. And, if you read all these quotes as a why we left, which it isn't, I don't want to put words in their mouth, but it becomes a very interesting contrast. And if I were a person at Wizards that wanted to make things there better, I would look to these things and say, how can we, for somebody like Jeremy Crawford and Chris Perkins, keep that passion really high, keep that feeling of connecting to the audience, resonate with the play experience. That would be an important thing to maintain. Of course, they could have just left because, I've had this job for a billion years and I'm tired of it, right? It could be as simple as that. They weren't answering the why they left question necessarily, but if you read it that way, this was a very interesting interview.
Well, yeah, it was interesting as you describe it, but it also goes back to everything that Dan Ayoub said, right?
Yeah.
Is, we need to believe in this. We need to think about the people who are creating it, but the audience is important. Those things are in the forefront of our minds as we design. So it's not a hell of a lot different than that.
Yeah.
Writing that we heard from Chris and Jeremy. And I see the center of gaming moving from Seattle, Washington to LA. More and more game companies, more and more designers, they're moving to, working out of LA. And I'm not saying that's a great thing. I'm not saying that's a terrible thing, but I am saying it's a thing. And I hope that we get the same thing that Chris and Jeremy and Dan say continues to hold true, which is keep in mind that what you are creating is not entertainment. What you are creating is a vehicle for other people's entertainment. And if you can keep that in mind, let the actual plays do their thing, right? Let the YouTube influencers do their thing. But always keep in mind that you are creating user manuals and structures for stories, not the stories themselves.
Well, it was almost the opposite, right? Because Todd mentions, and I thought this was very interesting coming from Todd, who is a very recent ex-Wizards employee as well. He mentions, in a very excited voice, how now Chris and Jeremy what they work on can now influence an animated series, a video game, a live action film. And I thought, these are wild things to say because literally that's what D&D has been trying to do forever. And at some extent has done all of these things in the past. But here's Todd speaking of it like this is a huge change for Chris and Jeremy. And what I think it is what he's saying is the connection between those things is now not about different departments or even with the reorganization that Dan Ayoub is probably putting in place, where it's all under one pillar or column or what do you want to call it, department. Here, it's a lot shorter, right? You can literally talk to the people who will do the voices, who are the show is based on their characters, who are also in the same room as the designer, and the designer's right there next to you, and you're Chris and Jeremy, right? Like it is all in one little building in one little area. And so I think that's why Todd mentioned it, literally saying things that Wizards does as well, but it's different here because it's that much more interconnected. And there is that trepidation on my end that, yes, what it could mean is that there is this push to make role-playing games not what they are because they can lead to all these other things. That's true at Wizards and true here, where you could very much start changing the character of it. Now, so far, of course, they haven't. Daggerheart doesn't feel like a game that's designed solely to be played in actual plays. In fact, kind of the opposite in some ways. It has dramatic potential, but it's more meaty than you might think for such a situation. So I don't know. They did again talk about the various projects they're working on. I think we've covered that before in pretty good extent. But if you've missed that, our past coverage, you can see it in our show notes.
We have news about an organized play for Shadowdark called the Shadow League. The Arcane Library announced that an organized play program will be starting in the spring of 2026. A Google Doc went out asking anyone interested as a player game master regional organizer or host venue to fill out the form. So they are as much of a grassroots game as Shadowdark is, obviously built on the genius of Kelsey Dion and others, but it started with a community that was able to support Kelsey's work. And looks like they are doing the same thing with their Shadowdark organized play, starting from the ground, saying who can help us out, and working up from there, which is, if it works, a very smart way to build a campaign that will be supportable rather than trying to do it from the top down.
I mean, we've talked about this before. It's so hard to create an organized play program, but we're excited to see what Shadow League does and how it motivates people, organizes people to be a part of it. That'll be great. I mean, Kelsey's been amazing at motivating folks to be involved, so I'm looking forward to see how this plays out.
From Shadowdark to Draw Steel, we get the Summoner open playtest from MCDM. They announced this playtest for the 10th class in the Draw Steel game called the Summoner. What is the Summoner, Teos?
It is a class that will summon up other creatures to serve it. And so as a result, it's considered a master class, meaning it's complex. So it's meant to be play tested and played by experienced players, not, this is my first time checking out Draw Steel. Oh, I'll try the Summoner. And you not only get the old 10 levels of the Summoner, but you also get a Summoner NPC as a retainer, a Summoner rival stat block across several echelons of play, 11 new treasures, and 4 new titles. And the playtest is open until Monday, September 8th, but anyone can access this through their Patreon. You can just click on it and download it and check it out and fill out that survey.
And if you're playtesting and you need minis, you can always go to Trash Mob Minis, who have new 2D paper minis that you can print out. They have a Patreon where they provide a free pack of minis for the Delian Tomb Adventure, with a link in our show notes to that Patreon from Trash Mob Minis. We go from Trash Mob to Pirate Borg. Pirate Borg in English? Yeah, we've got that. But what about Pirate Borg in 11 different languages?
That sounds good, but I think it's 9.
Is that what I say?
11.
11? Teos, my languages go to 11.
So your languages are 1 louder.
Yes, exactly.
2 louder?
Limerthon, creator of Pirate Borg, announced that the RPG is working with several companies to bring localized versions of the game to Brazil in Portuguese, Czech, French, German, Hungarian, Italian, Spanish, Russian, and Ukrainian, all through different partners. Each publisher has plans for Pirate Borg to be available for pre-order or for purchase by the end of 2025. Additional treasures like adventure zines, card packs, and the Down Among the Dead expansion will be translated selectively depending on where the winds blow and the publisher's plans.
Yeah, really cool. It's neat to see a game like that that's a relatively small game, reach out through all these different ways. But I think it's perfect. Like, Pirate Borg is the kind of easy to pick up game and low investment game that could work really well in a variety of markets. So I'm excited to see how this does and whether it's maybe a model that other companies could follow. Very cool. Another indication of how Limerthon kind of thinking outside the box with their different approaches. So exciting.
Yep. And if you want to see the publishers for each of those translations, you can go to our show notes to check that out. We have Exodus RPG releasing the Exodus Encyclopedia. So for $35.99, you can get the almost 300-page Exodus Encyclopedia, and it's 10% off if you have previously purchased the Player's Guide. What is the Exodus RPG? Well, it's based on the upcoming Exodus video game by Wizards of the Coast and game designer James Olin. James Olin also worked on this role-playing game book. The encyclopedia provides the species of the setting, celestial constructs, gear, such as remnants and advanced technology, and story tools for game masters. And
Shawn,
if you want to get them,
I was going to say, if you love savings, Get that bundle, which provides both the book and the Traveler's Handbook for $64.54, which is a 0% savings over purchasing them separately. So if you love to save that 0%, consider the bundle.
I save 0% every day, Teos.
Well, that's
every
you're
day.
A cunning shopper.
I am. And also cunning are our Creative Corner folks, including the 2025 ARPIA Awards, the Australian Role-Playing Industry Awards. Teos, you brought this up to our attention, so I'm going to let you take this one.
I did, which I was reminded by friend of the show, MT Black, who is a part of this award naming and organization and speaks at various Australian conventions. So the ARPIA recognizes the Australia RPG design community. It's really cool. So they just announced the finalists for this year with categories ranging from best artwork to best stream to best emerging creator, all highlighting folks in Australia, companies and individuals who are participating in our hobby and making it better. So congratulations to all those finalists and to the team in Australia that organizes. It's a really neat concept. You can see it all at arpia.org, see all the finalists there. And we also have a link in our show notes.
Mm-hmm. And last but not least, just seconds before I started recording, the Grim Hollow Player's Guide went live on D&D Beyond. So the Grim Hollow Transformed Player's Guide is a new class for 5th edition D&D 2024 from Grim Hollow, from Ghostfire Gaming. New class, so many new subclasses, 40 new subclasses, including 4 for the Monster Hunter. New spells, the transformation rules, the new species. I can't even, I'm losing my mind. So much new stuff.
Despite spending months of work on it.
Yes. My brain is out of capacity. But so you can get the player's guide now, and then at the end of the month, you will also be able to get the campaign guide. You can get them in a bundle, and if you do that, you do save more than 0%. I can assure you. And if you backed the Kickstarter and chose D&D Beyond as your virtual tabletop, you can look for codes and ways for you to get access to that content coming to you hopefully soon, because I'm one of them. So I'm waiting to see how I can access my stuff as well. And I want to thank D&D Beyond, Wizards of the Coast, and everybody at Ghostfire Gaming who have worked together to bring. It's a lot of work, Teos. This is a lot of content. It took months and months of work on everyone's part to get this there. So
you had to capitalize so many words.
Oh,
you had to take an action to capitalize. It was just...
Yeah, but I had to take the study action so many times.
Fantastic. Well, that's great. Hopefully folks who are listening will check it out and enjoy those transformations, which I understand came from Critical Role. Just kidding.
Obviously. That was our news and commentary section this week here on Mastering Dungeons.